Hey there, folks, and welcome to this week's Jungle Drums. I'm on my own again, and it's, basically my own fault. I've just been so engrossed with No Man's Sky since it launched. Obviously, we've had a little bit of news. We talked about it last week. Also, obviously, there was a brief article. I am reviewing it for the Xbox One as we speak. And I say reviewing it, I mean, I still haven't actually typed anything because I can't drag myself away from the game. If you already own No Man's Sky, look, you need to check out the next update. And for the Xbox One users out there, it's just, I don't want to go into it too much because, like I said, I am reviewing it. I'll write what I think in the review, but it is definitely a game that has engrossed me quite a bit. But in the meantime, I actually need to get off of that and do some Monster Hunter World because, of course, the Behemoth is now in the game and has some fantastic armor, a really awesome insect glaive, and the encounter, I haven't done it yet, does look really quite interesting. So that's my reason for being alone today. Also, my buddies, they've been really busy with Destiny 2. Destiny 2 has some great stuff in it right now with the whole... they're doing the Moments of Triumph again, but it's done quite differently than the way they've done it in the past. So now's a really good time to go back to Destiny 2 if you've been like me and have been kind of ignoring it for a while. Just occasionally getting on to check the updates. Now the month of August is a great time to get back into Destiny 2 because there's some unique quests and the fast track. Well, I say fast track, but a method to get 400 power armor by kind of revisiting some of your past accomplishments and also some new challenges. So definitely worth a look. Right, let's start off with a little bit of tech news. Now, if you've watched previous episodes of Jungle Drums, you'll know that I'm not a fanboy, but I'm a fan of the AMD Ryzen processors, specifically Threadripper. When Threadripper had first came out, it was just an astonishing CPU. Yes, it was quite expensive, but when you compare it to the Intel competitor, the i9s, especially on the higher core count, it was actually a bargain. Well, I've got an article here, but before I get into it, do you remember what the Threadripper box looked like? If you don't, here's a screenshot of it. It was a really cool packaging that was quite unique in how you had to open it. In fact, there was a lot of YouTubers out there that it was quite funny to watch them fail miserably trying to open this. Now, of course, Threadripper 2, is on the horizon. The release date is soon, trademark. And as far as the pricing of it, we do not know yet. People are assuming that it's going to be on par with the previous generation. Now, what's going to be interesting about that is, remember, the first gen Threadripper came in 3 variants. Their top-of-the-line one, which was a 16-core 32-thread processor. Then the middle tier was a 12-core 24-thread, and then their entry level was an 8-core 16-thread. Now, you might ask yourself, well, why would I even bother with the 8-core 16-thread Threadripper, considering I think at launch it was around $1,000 US, or around thereabouts, when you could just get a Ryzen 7 for much cheaper with the same core and thread count. Well, it all comes into the concept of PCI Express lanes. This is something that a lot of novice builders don't take into consideration. Like even top-of-the-line Intel i7s, they only have the ability to address so many PCI Express lanes. For example, if you have that shiny new M2 SSD, the little ones are about this big and they slot right into the motherboard, most of the high-end ones use 4 PCI Express lanes. Then you're talking about your video card, which uses 16. So just between those two items, you're using up 20 PCI Express lanes. Now, this is the problem with most processors that your average consumer tends to use. They don't have very many PCI Express lanes, or rather, the capability of the CPU, doesn't allow for much more than 20, are not much higher than that. And it's the same with the Ryzens. You know, they're only what's the I'm sorry, I should know this off the top of my head. Ryzen 7 PCI lanes. Right, so the Ryzen 7s have 24 PCI Express lanes. So again, keep in mind, if you've got one M2 SSD and one video card, that's already using up 20 lanes. So you only have 4 left for other items. Maybe you want other another M2 SSD, or other devices. And this is kind of an issue. Whereas when you look at Threadripper, Threadripper has 64 PCI Express lanes. And so this is where the big difference comes into play. Now, maybe not necessarily for gaming, but if you think about, as a power user, if you've got, lots of different like hard drives or even capture cards, because let's talk about that. If you've got like the new AverMedia 4K one, or even the Elgato 4K60 Pro, those will use, 4K60 Pro PCIe lanes. Yeah, see, that on its own uses up 4 lanes. So with your typical gaming setup, like especially say if you've went with a Ryzen chip, but even some of the i7s, just between your capture card, your video card, and your SSD, that's it. You've saturated. You're using up all the lanes that you can. Whereas when you look at the 64 available on Threadripper, it's just, as a platform, it's amazing. Now, okay, Threadripper isn't necessarily the best processor for gaming, but when you get into the utility aspect, when it comes to streaming, when it comes to video editing, when it comes to folding at home, it's just amazing. So Threadripper 2, the 2000 series, really has my attention because the flavor of these CPUs is on a completely different level. The top tier is a 32-core 64-thread, and their entry level, their bottom tier, is a 16-core 32-thread. That's right. Their bottom tier is the same core count as the first generation's top tier. So I'm really interested in what the pricing is going to be like, because I'm even considering holding off on buying the components for my next build and possibly going Threadripper. Threadripper also has, quad channel DDR support, and that means I'd probably end up buying twice as much RAM as I would with a different system. But we'll see. But anyway, sorry, I got caught up in Threadrippers because it's just so cool. But the reason I posted the image of the original Threadripper packaging is because, hey, the folks over at videocards.com have pictures of what the second-gen Threadripper packaging looks like. And, it's pretty badass. It's going to come in a new box with the processor hidden behind this nice translucent window. The description here states that the CPU emerges from a rocky, polygonal mountain covered in fire. The front opens and uncovers the CPU and a small shelf where all tools, stickers, and manuals are hidden. So yeah, the box looks absolutely stunning. I mean, just, buying the chip just for the box would be awesome. I can't wait to see, some of the top tech tubers out there got these amazing Threadripper boxes from AMD, with their review samples. I'm not cool enough to be on that list, but oh man, the stuff they got was just amazing. So it's going to be I'm really excited to see if they're going to do these same kind of crates with the second gen. I'm sure they will. The thing about Threadripper, it is a very large processor. It uses a different form factor called different socket called TR4. So it's exceptionally large and actually has to be torqued on a certain way. And that's the beauty of these processors. It comes with all of those tools. And there's a certain order you have to torque the bolts on. And it's also, because it's so large, the heat spreader on the processor, it really requires custom cooling. Now I say this because most of your typical, Ace Tech and whatnot form factors, tend to have like a little round copper plate on the bottom of them, and even the ones that are square, they don't cover the entire processor. So you need to make sure, if you do get Threadripper or jump on the second gen Threadripper bandwagon, that you purchase a cooler, whether that's a water cooler, whether that's an air cooler, that is made specifically for the TR4 socket, because it is kind of a strange rectangular shape. So just something to be mindful of. With that many cores, it's power hungry, it has quite a high TDP, and it will of course require quite a bit of cooling. But either way, that box, pretty badass looking. Right, next bit of news is gaming, and this is from GameSpot.com. And this is recently about how Casey Hudson, general manager at BioWare, was explaining a little bit more about how Anthem's single-player experience works. He basically had put a blog post out that centered on the theme of Our World, My Story. Now, what this means, basically is, well, first of all, Anthem. If you haven't heard of it, then you haven't been paying attention to E3 or any other kind of major gaming site when it comes to news. Anthem is, of course, highly anticipated. But at the same time, there's quite a bit of skepticism about whether or not it's really going to deliver, because of the fact that, well, EA's involved as well, aren't they? But those of us that have a bit of faith, we know that BioWare has generally delivered in terms of story and good quality gaming experiences. So hopefully this will be the case. But so basically, Casey Hudson had put in the BioWare blog talking about secret projects, for example, that Mass Effect and Dragon Age fans would really like. Now, don't misinterpret that as the next Mass Effect or the next Dragon Age. It doesn't necessarily mean that. It could very well be that they're working on the next iteration of those games, but on the other hand, maybe it's just something new, a new intellectual property that fans of those series will like. But one of the most common questions that the studio has been receiving is how players will have the agency to shape their own story. Because this is the danger of this type of game. You don't want it to be too linear. When you look at, for example, Destiny 2, which a lot of people try to compare this game to, or even games like The Division, this genre of shared world FPSs, or third-person shooters even, they're all quite linear. Yes, there's customization. You can have your own build, your own gear, but as far as the story goes, it's there is no different journey for people that play the game. Now, Anthem hopes to change that. Anthem is going to, again, their tagline is Our World, My Story. And the whole concept is that players come together in a dynamic shared world to complete missions, but then they return to a hub area to continue their individual story. So to quote directly from BioWare, in the dynamic open world, everything is experienced in real time by all Anthem players. Day, night, weather, and world-scale events that shape the ongoing narrative of the setting. This is our world, which we share as a player community. Then when you return to Fort Tarsus, that's actually a single-player experience. And it's where you spend time developing relationships, making choices, and seeing consequences. That's the my story part. That's definitely got my attention. I do have to say that I no longer really get hyped for games, when I wait the release. I'm much less likely to pre-order games now after some of the recent experiences with titles such as Destiny 2. Don't get me wrong, I know they're trying to improve that game and hopefully it will get there. But I don't want to be caught in that same experience. I want to just... Now, the exception is unless there's some really badass pre-order bonuses, then I might end up succumbing to that. But no, I really want to just kind of wait things out and see how it goes. But at the same time, I do really like being an early adopter and being there firsthand as a game develops. Destiny, the original one, The Division, Warframe, No Man's Sky. I've been involved in all of those games since launch, and it has been nice to see how they develop over time. So maybe it'll be the same with Anthem. But it is nice to hear, though, that the way their story's going to work, that it's this combination of, if you think about how in Mass Effect you could make choices that would kind of change the way the story would go, and BioWare, come on, when you think of some of I used to play all of their old titles, all the Forgotten Realms RPGs, absolutely loved them. Even things like Neverwinter Nights and whatnot. I mean, BioWare, they know what they're doing when it comes to narrative. So this concept of being able to have your own story and your choices change things for you, but then still having that online aspect of, these shared experiences, it's ticking a lot of boxes for me. And it does look fantastic, so we'll have to see how it all turns out. But Casey Hudson also teased something that people might find quite interesting, and that is, of course, that they are currently working on amazing plans, their quote, for Star Wars The Old Republic this year, which includes new features and surprises. So there you go. We'll just have to see what they do with that. But in regards to Anthem, look, Anthem is scheduled to come out on PS4, Xbox One, and PC on February 22nd of 2019. So we'll just have to see. It's I think it's going to be quite good. It's going to be interesting. It's going to be interesting. Now, something else that is interesting is, of course, the current tech industry and people that are buying other companies up. We talked about this previously. Who was it? I can't even remember. Someone had bought someone else, and I'm like, oh wow, that's cool. But it's really, really common in the tech world. A lot of things have been happening in the tech world. Just recently, Apple has become the first U.S. company to, is that right? The first U.S. company to be worth more than $1 trillion US. I remember getting up in my feed on my cell phone and thought that was quite interesting. But yes, we're not talking about Apple. We're talking about Logitech. So this article is from TheVerge.com, and Logitech is acquiring Blue microphones for $117 million. Now, it says there in cash, but no, they didn't actually, come to a meeting with suitcases. I don't know why they included that in the headline. But yes, I mean, the whole concept is, rather than, trading stocks or going for shares or something, they've actually outright, bought. They're acquiring Blue microphones for $117 million. Now, this doesn't really come as much of a surprise, because when you think about Logitech, and Logitech do make good quality products. I've used them over the years. I still have a Logitech joystick. And the thing about Logitech is they actually own several brands. Of course they have Logitech G, which is their kind of gaming side of things. But Logitech also owns Astro Gaming. Yeah, the folk that make the A50s and all that stuff, Logitech owns them. Jaybird and Ultimate Ears. So now, with the acquisition of Blue, which of course Blue makes some of the most popular microphones that streamers and other content creators use, the Snowball and the Yeti. And so, it's quite interesting. For Logitech, they wrote that it's a new space for them. At the same time, it's not, because they've been involved with gamers for a very, very long time. And let's be honest, they have headsets, so they're no stranger to audio. But as far as purpose-built microphones, this is, quite a good market for them to get into. Now, of course, we know about the Snowballs and the Yetis, but Blue actually sells microphones that go all the way up to $4,000 US. They do sell studio-grade hardware as well. So, it's more than just those two models of microphones. It's a big, bold move for Logitech to acquire all of that technology for their own. What happens a lot of times with these companies is they don't necessarily meddle too much. It depends on the company, but I've seen it before where they acquire, an IP or, a product, another manufacturer, and just have a look, hey, just you get on, do what you do. But obviously, if you need resources, we can help out. But that remains to be seen. Other companies sometimes actually tend to absorb their technology, where you might end up seeing Logitech versions of the blue microphones. We'll just have to see, what ends up happening with that. But no, it's quite neat. Again, it's just, this is what happens in the tech world. Companies buy other companies, in the goal of trying to further their own products, but also help out other companies, just give them access to resources. So it'll be interesting to see what happens for both companies in the future. Speaking of things in the future, shout out to my Canadian cousins, because Canada is going to be welcoming its first ever esports gaming stadium in 2019. I snagged this article from Variety.com, and this is about the gaming stadium announcement in Richmond, British Columbia. Right, so this is going to be Richmond, BC is about to open the area's first ever stadium that is created specifically for esports. Now, if you've ever watched, any like the grand finals for whatever game you like to watch, whether it's Dota, League of Legends, Counter-Strike, Rainbow Six Siege, a lot of times these stadiums they've been kind of retrofitted, or they're set up temporarily for a gaming event. The actual list of proper gaming stadiums is few and far between, unless we're talking about the Far East. South Korea, is one country that's a prime example of actual esports stadiums. But, there are other ones all over the world. But it's still not, many in the grand scheme of things. But so this one's going to be coming to Canada next year, and the gaming stadium facility is going to be the city's home for esports events, and it's going to play host to tournaments, major events, and all sorts of other happenings within the esports world. The sizable arena is going to have enough seating for up to 250 spectators, 40 gaming setups, a casual gaming area open to all players, a broadcast facility with a full suite of options, and food and beverages to keep event attendees and staff happy and fed, while they get down to do some serious gaming. So yeah, sounds pretty cool. The stadium is backed by My Esports Ventures Limited, and they estimate that the stadium is currently planned for a grand opening in 2019. To quote the CEO, Dan Sybak, we have so much in store for everyone, and we are excited to continue making announcements leading up to launch. This is going to change the landscape of esports in Vancouver. There's currently no mock-ups for the way the stadium might look, but hopefully in the next few months we'll get more details. Hey, way to go, Canada. I mean, that's awesome that you're in and around Vancouver. You're going to be getting your first ever gaming stadium. So it'll be quite cool to see if they build that. Hopefully that'll generate also an influx of events, and then maybe even some kind of gaming and tech shows. I mean, I know a gaming stadium maybe isn't the best place for something like that, but hey, who knows? It could work. Either way, if you're in Canada, I know Canada's huge, so if you're in the Vancouver area, keep an eye out for that. And in fact, if you see or find out where they're actually building this, keep in mind it's supposed to be in Richmond. Please send us a message or an image of it on the Discord over at ScarletGamers.com. That thing's still broken, by the way. Still only says there's 0 online, which is not true. But yeah, I'd be really, really interested to check it out and get more deets. Obviously, it's difficult for me because I'm on the other side of the ocean. But hey, any of you Canadians out there, go have a look for me. It'd be pretty cool to see. Now, something that, well, for some people might be cool to see. I've got to admit, not for me. It's really not my thing. But I do appreciate what it's done for the gaming world, and of course that is Call of Duty. According to GamesRadar.com, the Black Ops 4 multiplayer beta is live now, and here's how to get in and start playing. So that's right, so you can, this weekend, get your first hands-on with Call of Duty Black Ops 4. It's a closed beta that's going on this weekend, because the actual game itself won't be launching until October 12th. The beta is supposed to be able to provide you with, a sizable portion. They haven't disclosed how much, but a sizable portion of multiplayer content for you to try out. And of course, this is a chance for Activision to get feedback on, how the game is playing, as far as mechanics, if there's balance issues, the usual type of stuff you expect from a multiplayer beta. Now, unfortunately, as par for the course with Activision and Call of Duty, it's not just as simple as hitting the online store of your chosen platform to log in and start playing. If you want to be able to play the Black Ops 4 beta, you need to do a few things. But keep in mind that this beta, this month's at least, because they're going to do two, but this month's private beta does not include access to Blackout, which of course is Black Ops 4 upcoming Battle Royale mode. That's getting its own separate beta in September, allegedly. Instead, this multiplayer beta is going to include access to 3 modes, including the new control mode, 3 maps, and up to 16 different weapons, depending on how far you're able to progress. Of course, unfortunately, any progress you do achieve during the beta is not going to transfer over to your account once you purchase the full game. So, this is really for the diehards. If you're really into Black Ops, or Call of Duty, and you want to get your hands on it right away, and just kind of get in there and experience it, then yeah, you'll have to get in there and check it out. You won't have access to any of the story-based or even the Nazi zombies content in the beta either, because that's all going to be locked until the game finally releases on October 12th. So if you're a PlayStation 4 owner, you'll have early access to an exclusive weekend, which ends on August 6th. The beta is then going to open up to the PC and Xbox One, alongside PS4 players next weekend. So this weekend is only for PlayStation 4 players, PlayStation 4 owners. Whereas next weekend will be PS4, PC, and the Xbox One. The PC crowd, this is quite interesting. The beta is open up to everyone, right? So anyone can play it. Whereas for the PS4 and Xbox One, it is a private beta, which means you have to pre-order Call of Duty Black Ops 4 if you want to gain access to it. If you pre-purchase the game digitally through the PSN, the PlayStation Store, the Microsoft Store, or even Battle.net, you don't need to do anything, right? You'll be automatically signed up for the beta. But remember, if you pre-order the game from an actual shop with, like Amazon or GameStop, EB Games, you'll have a beta redemption code on your receipt, or you should. I know Amazon can sometimes be quite tricky about this. I'm a big fan of pre-ordering things on Amazon, or at least I was in the past, because as we all know, you don't actually pay for it until it dispatches. Whereas if you pre-order something on your respective console store, you have to pay right then and there. So I'm a fan of using Amazon, but I know it can be quite a headache, especially with these beta codes and the actually getting them. But yeah, the beta is available to pre-download now, and for PlayStation folk, of course. For the Microsoft Store and PC, it'll probably be next Thursday, next Friday, just before the beta goes live. But hey, I won't be participating because I enjoyed them, I like them, but I'm not a massive fan of online shooters, like aside from things like Siege. Don't be wrong, I know there's story there, and I've done that with the Black Ops games where I've played through the campaign, but because I'm not interested in the multiplayer aspect, it's just wasted on me. But hey, if you're into that, then you may want to pre-order that so you can get access to the beta, or you could just wait until it comes out and see how it goes from there. Right, so next bit of news, which is the last bit of news for this week, is from Polygon.com. And this has to do with World of Warcraft. And this headline, it really caught my attention. The headline reads, World of Warcraft's latest story campaign has ignited the fanbase. Blizzard's War of the Thorns has created a fiery controversy. Now, I'll be honest, yes, I used to be really, really into WoW, but I've taken a step back. I don't play it anymore. The guilds that I were in, I was in different ones. Even I had one of my own at one point, and we were all about progression. We were trying to always reach that number one spot on the server. The best that we ever got was around 3. And it was very high octane, high pressure, especially being an officer in one of those progression guilds. And the amount of time it took was ridiculous. So I really, really backed off. I tried getting back into it just last year, but unfortunately, obviously all the people I used to play with have all moved on or doing different things in their lives. There was a couple of folks still on it, and it was great to talk with them and hang out, but it just, as I had moved on with my kind of gaming choices, they've kind of moved on with how they do things. They're still, in WoW, but they've made new friends, new community and stuff. So I've always been a big believer that WoW, even so the game's great, the narrative's fantastic, it was always about who you played it with. And so I think that's why I just can't quite get back into it anymore. But anyway, as you know, we covered this a little while back. World of Warcraft is about to get a new expansion, and of course that is Battle for Azeroth, which is going back to its roots, WoW's roots of faction against faction conflict. Because you remember the last few expansions have kind of blurred the lines between the whole, Horde versus Alliance. There's been other threats, and there's been kind of a tenuous relationship between the two sides, because returning to the status quo, as they write here, isn't necessarily a bad thing. Blizzard has rolled out a 2-part pre-expansion campaign called The War of the Thorns, right? So that's live. If you're playing WoW, you can experience that now. And it's got 2 different stories for the Horde and for the Alliance, and it culminates with the Night Elf world tree, Teldrassil. Well, I don't want... this is tricky because I want to talk about it, but I don't want to spoil it if you haven't got to it yet. But basically, some bad stuff happens to the Night Elf's world tree. Let's just say that. Now, okay, well, maybe we can reveal, because we know that Teldrassil gets burnt down, right? They released that, or they leaked that at BlizzCon last year. So if you're a diehard WoW fan, you already know that, most likely. And if you didn't, and I just spoiled it, I'm sorry, but come on. So the Alliance mobilizes to retake the Undercity from the Horde as a direct response to that. And so what I'm reading here is, they're saying the devil's in the details, and fans are taking to social media to express their unhappiness with the current story and what it means for their characters. So it's quite interesting how this goes into it, because then to understand why they're so upset, you need to go all the way back to Cataclysm. In that expansion, the founding war chief of the Horde, Thrall, stepped down from his position and appointed Garrosh Hellscream. Now, Garrosh, his story started off pretty cool, but ended up with him committing so many war crimes that players had to team up to take him down as the final boss in Mists of Pandaria. Now, Garrosh's successor, Vol'jin, was a perfectly fine war chief until he died at the beginning of Legion. Vol'jin had only served for 1 full expansion, and in his place, on the advice of his gods, he appointed Sylvanas Windrunner, one of the Horde's darkest characters. Many fans were hoping this would be the beginning of a new era of stability for the Horde, or a chance for Sylvanas to further evolve towards being a hero. But so this whole burning of the tree, Teldrassil, is just, fans have just went crazy about it. They're denouncing, all sorts of stuff. It's, it's such a good read. I don't want to do a misservice here. Go check out the article, right? The links, obviously, well, if you're watching on the website, the links, just above the video here, because the outrage is really quite amazing. Because WoW players can be quite a passionate bunch, that's for sure. Especially the ones that get really, really involved in the lore, which is funny when you think of the early days, because the lore was just all kind of made up as they went along. And they've been trying to kind of, put more effort into the storytelling as the years, as the game had blown, out of proportion. But yeah, there's some themes there. When you think about, genocide, destruction of property, torture, and assassination, all these things have always been in Warcraft. And the Horde, were always kind of incriminated, or they were associated with that. The thing that's getting folk is that every Horde player has to participate in this quest or not play the new content at all. So it's quite weird. The article brings up a really good point of how the Horde and Alliance have both basically been sold to us, the players, as morally grey factions. With both sides each contributing equally to the endless cycle of hostilities. But this latest campaign changes that, because it paints the picture of the Alliance being innocent while the Horde are the aggressors. Which, if you have been keeping tabs on previous World of Warcraft lore, you know that that's never really been the case. They're misunderstood. Yes, there's evil people or evil creatures that then get, thrown in or attributed to the Horde. Look at like the Burning Legion, but that wasn't the Horde's fault, right? That was another entity. But yeah, I can see why folk are pissed off. I used to love playing as Tauren, which of course Tauren, they're druidistic and they love life and everything. They don't seem like an evil player. Whereas this new storyline does paint the picture of the Horde being evil and taking bad actions, which a lot of players, especially if you've been a Horde player for, years upon years, you'll have this sense of identity of your character. And now to be given or force-fed this narrative that no, you're a bad guy. I can see why, Horde players are feeling a bit weird about having to be the evil faction, while the Alliance is, are the good guys, because that was never the case with WoW. It was just two different factions, different, races, and initially at least different abilities, but as they've progressed, they've kind of muddied the waters there. But that's always been the case. It was never a case of good versus evil. They were just different. But now, honestly, the Battle for Azeroth looks like it's drawing a very firm line in the sand, which is a bit of a shame. But again, it's early days. Maybe they'll rectify this, because World of Warcraft is usually quite good about listening to feedback from the community. But yeah, interesting. If there's any WoW players out there, again, let us know in the Scholarly Gamers Discord what you think about the new narrative. Are you a Horde player that feels hard done by because of this new narrative? Or are you an Alliance player and you feel that it's quite right that now the Horde are being recognized for the evil scum that they are? It goes back to like the argument between the Star Wars, the rebel scum and the Imperial. Anyway, the Empire. Who's the real bad guy here? Wait a minute, aren't the the rebels actually terrorists? aren't they the ones that were bombing and blowing up government facility? Oh, wait a minute. Maybe that's a bit too deep. Anyway, look, that's it. Short and sweet. Hopefully next week we'll be back on plan with getting someone on. Either my buddies or maybe we'll try to get somebody else. We'll see. We'll just have to see how the schedules all work out. In the meantime, look, make sure to check out the rest of the website. Just this week on ScholarGamers.com, the latest episode of Armchair Gaming dropped. It's part 2 of the topic of death and finality. This time, the Unbearable Gamer was playing Monster Hunter World, which, is one of my favorites. And it was, really, really good vid. You should definitely watch the series. Remember, you can catch up on all that either by going to the Scholar Gamers YouTube or just on the website itself, go into video content. Then at the top, you'll see the little boxes. You can click on Armchair Gaming, and then you can see all of the episodes in a nice little playlist for you. Just waiting for you to watch. Same with articles and reviews. Plenty of stuff there to catch up on. And of course, if you're into streaming, look, just hashtag Scholarly Gamers or go to the Scholarly Gamers streaming community. Likewise, on the website, you can actually just go to streaming, and then you can see who's online. And there's nice little graphics and squares to just click on the link and watch a stream directly. So yes, over the weekend, no doubt there'll be plenty of folks streaming all sorts of different games. But in the meantime, look, have a good weekend, stay safe, and we will catch you next time on Jungle Drums. Catch you later.